Video game movies have one of the most notorious reputations, frequently cited as some of the worst movies ever made. But as recent movies have shown signs of improvement, how did they get this reputation in the first place? And are they as bad as they say? Why do I do this to myself? Okay. To be clear, whilst movies about video games like Ready Player One, Free Guy, Wreck-It Ralph or Tron include references or familiar elements of real video games, these are often about a fictional game, or at least an original story that just so happens to include some established video game characters.
Donkey Kong.
What I'm looking at are video game adaptations, where a game or a series of games provide the source material to make a movie. And I'm sticking to movies, not TV, so no Castlevania, Witcher, or the Super Mario Super Show, I'm afraid.
I want my feet licked. Nice.
Because of the interactive nature of video games, this makes it a difficult medium to adapt compared to books, comics, or TV shows. Earlier games can have loose storylines with blank slate protagonists, and later games can have crazy long runtimes, and a movie would struggle to fit in all that lore. So often, creative liberties need to be taken to make it work, and this is where many falter. So I watched 64 movies in 3 weeks to answer the question, what happened to video game movies?
Let's go.
Unlike my analysis of spoof movies, this isn't just one genre. There's action, horror, animation, comedy, so the evolution of video game movies comes with multiple influences. I shall note, but I'm not going to judge the movies based on how faithful an adaptation they are to their respective games. Obviously, if a movie studio is going to adapt a game and use its popularity as a marketing tool, then it comes with expectations, especially from ardent fans, and it needs to represent that game well. But just because a movie sticks religiously to the source material doesn't automatically make it good, nor does it make the ones that stray away worse. I mean, 99's Wing Commander was literally directed by the game's own creator, and it still sucked.
You got balls. You should see them.
So I'm reviewing these 30 years worth of movies based on their own merits to analyse where did they go wrong and where did they go right.
But I can't do this on an empty stomach. Don't you wish you can go back to your childhood and do nothing but eat cereal, play video games and watch cartoons all day? Well, you can't. Time moves forward. It will never stop.
Everything you know and love will be lost in the sands of time.
But you can get that nostalgic feeling thanks to this video sponsor, Magic Spoon.
Magic Spoon isn't just any old cereal, so throw away that box of dry twigs.
Okay.
Magic Spoon has flavours like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, and cinnamon, blueberry, and more. So these have a range of great flavours like your childhood favourites, but these are much healthier. They have 0 grams of sugar, 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, also only 140 calories. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. It can even help you with your homework.
So then you carry the two.
Oh, okay.
So, click the link in the description and grab yourself a nutritious, delicious variety pack and try it out for yourself. And if you're not happy with it for any reason, you'll get a refund. If you use the promo code Eddache or the link magicspoon.com/Eddache, you'll get $5 off any order. And they ship to Canada and the UK as well. So thank you, Magic Spoon, for sending me enough cereal to build a small fort. So be sure to check them out. And now, a history lesson. In the beginning, we had computers that played chess, thanks in part to Alan Turing, a technological genius who helped crack the Nazi secret code in World War II, and was rewarded by being arrested for being gay, chemically castrated, and later committing suicide. Woo, we're off to an awkward start. Then, Willie Higginbotham, pause for laughter, used an oscilloscope, pause for laughter, and it wasn't chess this time, it was tennis. But then it broke. But what if you wanted to play video games outside of a lab, in an arcade, like a pinball machine, but with a periscope? Pause for laughter. Oh look! Space games! It led to the creation of Unix, which is what ran Jurassic Park.
It's a Unix system.
See? A little imagination goes a long way. So, people imagined having video games in your own home. Then the Odyssey came out. But never mind that. Tennis is back! But yell, the Odyssey yelled. We had a tennis game first, except they didn't. Then lots of people had tennis games, and it got confusing for a while. But never mind that, it's the Atari 2600. Let's give it some ports. Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, Let's port that. I hope it's not terrible. It was. There's a lot of consoles now. The Astro K, the Intellivision, the ColecoVision. Is that all? But that's not all. The Channel F System 2, the Commodore 64, the Atari 5200, the Tandyvision. There's even video games about movies. Things are going great. Things are not going great. Home consoles are too big, too expensive, and too many. The games are so bad they got banished to a landfill in New Mexico, and no one's buying video games anymore. That's it. Game over. But never mind that, it's the Famicom, or the Nintendo Entertainment System, depending where you are. And with the help of a robot with a gun, Nintendo saves the day. Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, they've even got a tennis game! So thanks to Nintendo's peripherals, it managed to save the video game industry by positioning themselves not just as a console, but as a toy. However, this gave video games a stigma that lasts to this day. Now, we all know this isn't true, but this was the commonly held opinion in the late 80s and early 90s, since that's how they were marketed.
If you're a real good player, meaning you've got the skill of a 9 or 10-year-old, you can even try to jump your car.
And so the movies reflected this with the first ever video game movie, Super Mario Bros. But not that one. The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach was released in 1986, a full 7 years before the live-action one. This is a charming, kid-friendly animated movie, and it fits perfectly into Japan's culture of fantasy anime tales. In fact, when this movie came out, only the first Super Mario Bros. Existed, with Lost Levels coming out that year. It had little source material to draw upon, but it still had elements that would become Mario lore even today, like Bowser trying to marry Princess Peach. It's interesting to see how well Nintendo knew their characters even then. After Bowser is defeated, the film ends with this dog character turning into a prince? He's a furry? This is Peach's fiancé, and initially Mario is jealous of this, but he quickly respects her wishes. This is quite a surprising twist, but it neatly demonstrates Mario's heroic qualities. He is selfless, whilst Bowser is selfish. Although, saying this, Prince Haru doesn't appear in any Mario media ever again. I wonder what happened to him. However, in the West, a 1993 Mario movie took on a different form. This was, to say the least, an attempt.
Monkey!
An attempt to set Mario in a quote-unquote real world by making it dark and gritty. So a pessimistic view of the world, really. It's not so bad outside, is it? Okay, don't answer that. Influenced by Batman, Ghostbusters and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this became a cyberpunk dystopia, but, you know, safe for kids.
Name? Mario. Last name?
Mario. Luigi.
Luigi?
No, Luigi Mario.
Mario and Luigi Mario set out to rescue Princess Daisy. Peach must have been busy getting busy. In this dinosaur dimension, which is made to be an incredibly 90s parody of New York. It's dirty and grimy and the people are rude, crude and full of attitude, so not at all like the games. The Mario games were up to Super Mario World at this point, hence the dinosaur people who aren't really dinosaurs except for that one dinosaur.
No, get away from my baby! Get away from my baby!
However, they were still generally pretty lax when it came to story. So this movie had the opportunity to reinterpret the games any way they wanted to. Their idea was to make this the real Mario, and the game was the misinterpreted version, which is a bold strategy and not one that paid off.
Ouch, town population, you, bro!
What didn't help was the very troubled production, such as last-minute script changes and constant on-set fallouts, but despite that, a film got made. The final result is pretty fun.
Aliens? Oh, we gotta deal with aliens too?
Luigi, we're the aliens!
But probably not in the way they intended. It's ludicrous and campy, and not at all the real-world grounded version they were aiming for. To look back on it now with a hint of irony, it's a perfectly fine, kid-friendly cyberpunk adventure, and I will never tire of Bob Hoskins being grumpy.
Hey, go on, pick a direction. Any direction you like. Hey, that looks good over there, huh? That's it, let's die there.
But the Mario references feel so tacked on, like lip service.
Be proud! Go Goomba!
This is a similar situation to the 1994 Street Fighter movie. This would follow Guile's military war against M. Bison, but would sprinkle in other characters, like this reporter is Chun-Li and her crew is, E. Honda and Balrog. Isn't Balrog a villain in the game? Who cares? Characters are just name-dropped, bearing little resemblance to their counterparts. This isn't automatically a bad thing, but it will only mean something if you're a fan. And if you are a fan, then you know it's wrong.
General Bison, he's a bad guy. If you know this, then why do you serve him?
Because he paid me a freaking fortune, you moron.
You got paid?
This also faced a troubled production, a genre mix of martial arts, war films, and James Bond. In fact, the war film element gives it a creepy pro-military and anti-diplomacy vibe.
Colonel, have you lost your mind?
No. You've lost your balls.
Like Team America, but without the parody.
I like balls.
training for the martial arts sequences got constantly rearranged, meaning they often did the coordination only hours before they shot the scene. This, along with the cuts made so it wouldn't get an R rating, makes the film feel overly sanitized. The reason for the scheduling changes was this movie's saving grace, other than Zangief.
Quick, change the channel!
Some may wonder why such a fine actor like Raul Julia would be in this film, but his children loved the Street Fighter games, so he accepted the role so he could leave something behind for them. He died before the film came out, and no matter what you think of the final result, every moment when Raul Julia is on screen is an utter joy.
The day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
But again, this camp and corny style is fitting for a movie aimed towards kids. Violence that isn't too violent, cartoonishly evil characters, and even more cyberpunk. It's just more turtles. Likewise for Double Dragon. Camp, corny, non-violent violence, cartoon villains, and cyberpunk. Like, this is meant to be a street gang's hideout, and it looks more like a kid's playground, and I want to live there. But of course, there is another 90s movie about iconic characters fighting to the death, and it is called Pokemon. Okay. I'll come back to Mortal Kombat, I promise. Following on from Super Mario, anime movies based on video games were generally better adaptations. Most of the time.
Why are you so upset? Is it because your father threw you off that cliff?
Instead of being forced to be grounded in some sense of reality and face the limitations of visual effects, these movies can go much wilder with spectacular visuals and better represents how the games feel rather than just how they look. For example, this does a better job at capturing the spirit of Street Fighter rather than this. However, this can render these kind of movies alienating to the uninitiated, and in some cases just make no sense at all. Like, why does the president in the Sonic OVA have a cat girl as a daughter? Did he fuck a cat? He definitely fucked a cat.
Strange, isn't it?
Pokemon, the first movie, came out at the height of Pokemania in 1999. Likewise, this film does very little to introduce audiences to what Pokemon even are, being treated as an extension of the TV series and presumes you've done your homework ahead of time.
Who's that Pokemon? It's Pikachu!
There's this sequence where Ash fights a random trainer during the intro, and it kinda does the explaining through the visual storytelling, summoning creatures from balls and making them fight each other, and the mood is kept light and jovial. You don't get any sense that anyone's in peril or really getting hurt. It's fun and games. So I guess if you don't get Pokemon by this point, this is going to be a long 90 minutes for you. In fact, the real introduction of this movie is the introduction of Mewtwo, a man-made cloned Pokemon.
Am I just an experiment? A laboratory specimen? This cannot be.
We spend a long time on this sympathetic origin story with a surprising amount of philosophy for a film that's about an angry cartoon cat.
What is my true reason for being? I will find my own purpose and purge this planet of all who oppose me.
This sets up the tone for the movie, which is steeped in tragedy, and it does not let up, hitting you with blow after blow.
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
They're Pokemon! It's literally what they're made for! For example, the friendly fight at the start is now contrasted against Ash watching Pokemon in a futile battle, like he's watching a war scene of soldiers dying around him. But of course, nobody actually dies. Whoops. Too soon? The tragedy reaches its lowest point as Ash symbolically dies trying to stop the fight. The desperation in Pikachu trying to revive his friend. All this is a bold move. It's a powerful emotional moment. It's super effective. Of course, Ash has to be revived, and the power of Pokemon Tears is goofy, but I think after such a heavy build-up, it can have this one.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
So the first Pokemon movie poses a lot of deep, complex themes, despite being aimed for children, but perhaps they thought they went too far with this, because the subsequent movies scale this back. The Pokemon movie 2000, wow, that's a lot of sequels, tries to do some of the only the chosen one can do this quest type stuff, but all that amounts to is Go to Island and get BOLL. The third Pokemon movie has magical Pokemon granting a small girl's wishes, resulting in the land slowly being taken over. This is a really interesting premise. A child with untold, undisciplined powers? This could really go places. Except she doesn't. Basically staying in her house the whole time. And I know that feeling. The fourth movie actually does introduce the concept of Pokemon to newcomers. In the fourth movie. And while effort is made to get a sense of magic and wonder to all this world, it tries to recreate the familiar emotional beats from the first film, but it all feels a bit artificial at this point. Because of the success of the Pokemon movies, Fox tried to replicate this with Digimon. But rather than create an original story, they just patchworked a selection of short films and then re-edited, rewrote, and redubbed the whole thing. It's just a cash cow. Or a cash cowamon. The result is, as you would expect, a total mess.
That's the saddest story I ever heard.
I'm the one with the problem, not you. Get over it.
Okay.
But for many of you, this is a piece of nostalgia you'll fight to the death over, so perhaps I should just shut my dumb mouth. There has been a Pokemon movie released every year since 1998, and if you're wondering why I didn't watch all 20 plus movies for this video,
It's because...
there's over 20 of them! In 2017, the Pokemon movies got something of a reboot with I Choose You, a retelling of the original anime episodes. Then in 2019, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution is a remake of the first movie. While it's a pretty faithful retelling, it makes subtle changes that nerfs the impact the original had. The scientists at the start are now more innocent, and it's Mewtwo who is cruel for daring to have an existential crisis. How dare he?
Now the serious testing begins.
These humans, they care nothing for me.
Pikachu has this sequence where he runs up a staircase to get away from, I guess, evil Pokeballs, and in the original you can see his power depleting in desperation and flops on the stairs exhausted, and in this version he doesn't do that. So there's just less suspense.
Humans, you have served my purpose. I am sparing your lives for the moment.
Humans, I have no desire to cause you harm. Simply go home, now.
By pulling back on the tragedy, this lacks what made the original special. It is an inferior clone. Pokemon as a franchise is constantly at war with itself because it's trying to justify what is basically cockfighting. So Detective Pikachu avoids all that, for the most part. Just like the game it's based on, it is a subversion of the familiar Pokemon format, focused on more being a comedy mystery.
Because if I'm still alive and kicking, that means Harry's out there too. Case closed. But still open until I solve it.
Wait, is that Angels with Filthy Souls? Is this set in the same universe as Home Alone? I wonder what Pokemon Macaulay Culkin has. Ryan Reynolds carries this film, quipping like a PG Deadpool.
Smell my finger.
I will never smell your finger.
And the incredible VFX really brings the emotions to life. The CG Pokemon here flirt with the uncanny valley, but that only adds to the creepy and noir-esque moments. Like the interrogation scene with an eerie-looking Mr. Mime trying to get information out of someone who doesn't talk. That's a perfect meld of Pokemon lore and detective tropes. I like it. I wish it did this more.
Circle, house, moon, house. Not for the games. Say it. Just say it. Talk, you stupid mind!
The finale instead turns into this pretty weak CG scrappy squabble, but the charm and character of the film makes this a great video game movie. Now, I was meant to come back to something. What was it again?
Get over here!
So, following from the 90s efforts of Mario and Street Fighter, 1995's Mortal Kombat, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, represents the first sincere attempt at a live-action adaptation. Something more faithful to the source material, but with one vital difference. No gore.
I don't think so.
In 1993, there was a US congressional hearing because of violence in video games. Still stuck with this video games are for kids mentality, games like Mortal Kombat and Night Trap were heavily scrutinized for corrupting children. The result of this would lead to the ESRB, a rating system for games, just like movies.
Finish him. Morality.
While the Mortal Kombat movie was made separately, the controversy undoubtedly had an influence on the film. It was made to be PG-13, which meant no on-screen deaths, but only for the human characters. So, frozen sculptures and CG lizards are fine, but for this dude? Despite this compromise, the film remains a cult classic amongst fans, and some of the actors have even become alternate skins in the latest Mortal Kombat game.
Ready to face your demons?
I will finish this.
Ironically, these are the same three actors who were recast in the 1997 sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. This film was stuffed with even more characters and fights, but as a result, this was a bloated mess, and was apparently released unfinished. Then in 2010, a fan-made short film, Mortal Kombat Rebirth, led to an officially made web series, Mortal Kombat Legacy. In 2020, Warner Bros. Animation released Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge, which begins a sort of redemption arc for the typically villainous Scorpion. Get over here and give me a hug. This was the case too for 2021's live-action Mortal Kombat. Now this is the movie the 95 version should have been. Refreshingly violent. Personally, I prefer this to the animated violence, but it's still better than this. Following the mainstream popularization of girl power in the mid-90s, along with the PlayStation generation marketed away from kids and more towards late 90s edgy teens, there was a rise in female-led action games, which meant a rise in female-led action movies in the early 2000s. Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, and Tomb Raider. Lara Croft Tomb Raider, a title with all the keywords in it, starring the perfectly cast Angelina Jolie. For the most part, this is another sincere attempt, with locations, set pieces, action, attitude, and a box office success. But it's such a slow slog to actually get going.
Culminating in a full solar eclipse. It only happens once every 5,000 years.
When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
The 2003 sequel, The Cradle of Life, cuts to the chase much sooner and makes for an overall more exciting movie. But Lara Croft is too good. I mean, when she can effortlessly pole vault onto a bloody helicopter, it's not all that exciting because there's no sense of danger. Speaking of not exciting, Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, a technological breakthrough that did not break through the box office. This film was such a disastrous flop, one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. In fact, the film shared very little with the Final Fantasy franchise other than broad themes of life, death, spirituality, and a batshit story that makes no sense. Don't at me.
I see now. I understand.
Well, I don't understand.
But you could remove Final Fantasy from the title and it would make no difference. The main character, Aki, was planned to appear in other movies, making her a virtual actor, a performer they would own like The Truman Show. But, like a puppet, she and the others are soulless wooden characters and lack the emotion needed to carry an emotion-heavy story. And with a lot of technobabble, spirit waffle, and no engaging characters, this is just boring, despite Steve Buscemi trying his absolute best.
So I gather this will be somewhat of a rough ride.
Doc, you've got a talent for understatement.
In 2005, Advent Children comes out, almost overcompensating for Spirits Within. As an epilogue to Final Fantasy VII, this to me swings too far the other way, as it makes little to no sense unless you've played the game. So really, this was just made exclusively for fans. And like Lara Croft, it's hard to feel any sense of suspense or danger when they're literally sword fighting in the sky. This brings us to Resident Evil, written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson following the success of Mortal Kombat. Similar to Spirits Within, this has original characters, which liberates them from sticking to the pre-established game lore, but this is still firmly set in the world of Resident Evil, under the umbrella of, well, Umbrella. This is a great film. For half the movie, it's a super tense and mysterious horror movie, and she looks vulnerable until she kung fu kicks a dog in the face, and now it's a ridiculous action movie. This undercuts the sense of danger, but unlike Lara Croft, this feels earned. Resident Evil games suit movies well because you unlock new areas and abilities through progression, so the stakes keep escalating and the result is a lot of fun.
The game movie is fun.
This would spawn 5 sequels. Apocalypse has Alice escorting a child out of an infected city, but this is all action with no horror. Bloody escort missions. Extinction ups the ante from an office to a city to the world infected, but this is just uninspired. Like, they go to the ruins of Las Vegas and all they do is open one shipping container. That's it. Ugh. The crow scene is pretty cool, though. Afterlife is set in a prison, and then they go to a boat, and Retribution is set in some facility full of clones of the past characters and monsters in recreations of world-famous locations, like some kind of evil Epcot, and it's just... But then it ends on the White House, surrounded by zombies. This will be our final chapter. Oh boy, this is what they've been building up to! The final chapter! So anyway, after all that White House stuff, and no, wait, what? What? What happened to the White House stuff? We just cut to later? We don't even get to see it? After everything, this is a total anticlimax. Everything from before gets undermined with stuff like, I thought you were dead! Nope, that was my clone, lol! There's no satisfying closure, and the sequels seem more obsessed with trying to recapture the magic of that first movie. Like, they bring back the famous laser hallway. Twice! More established characters from the games are dropped into the story, but each time they just look like some random cosplayer they scooped up from Comic-Con, rather than something that actually fits in this world. And even then, the characters come, go, get sidelined, die, come back, die again. Maybe they should just be left alone to exist in the CG movies. As the sequels go on, I can only assume that Alice in Zombieland was a lucky fluke, because it's clear there was no plan. At the end of Apocalypse, she's given force powers, which she then uses in Extinction, but then in Afterlife, the first thing Wesker does is depower her. But it makes no real difference. By this point, Alice is so OP, there are no stakes. Only the stakes the zombies make out of whichever gang of humans she hangs around with this time. After Resident Evil, Anderson, along with his wife, Mila Jovovich, made Monster Hunter in 2020. And it's more desert. Instead of setting the movie in the game's world, there was this bizarre decision to have the soldiers from the US military get teleported in by a magic rain cloud. This idea isn't even from a Monster Hunter game. This was apparently inspired by a Monster Hunter-themed bonus mission in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
A talking cat.
Where you can hunt the monsters with machine guns. You know, a joke, and not one worth basing a whole movie over. The result is an unsatisfying and incoherent mess, which has struggled to perform, especially because of a line of dialogue which caused the film to be pulled from circulation in China. So really, this film is just one big bad joke. Also, I could suspend my disbelief about giant monsters and teleporting thunderstorms or whatever, but how the hell did a Hershey's bar survive in a back pocket in the desert? That doesn't make sense, Paul! So, Paul W.S. Anderson has directed a lot of video game movies. Gee, I wonder if anyone else is famous for directing a lot of video game... Okay, fine, it's Uwe Boll. Uwe Boll is one of the most infamous names in video games. Having made a few horror movies, he would adapt House of the Dead in 2003.
I want to give this to you.
What's this for?
It's for your protection.
It's okay, I'm on the pill.
This would be a totally fine, corny zombie action movie, in a irony watch kind of way. But this film feels more like bullet porn. Like this shootout has the bullet go and then it hits the zombie like and so many spinny rotations like he's trying to out-Matrix the Matrix, and other absurd choices like gimmicky wipes and constantly cut into the gameplay footage, and not just a couple of times. No, stop! There's these creeping shots by characters barely obscured, crash zooms into zombies at random points. These directorial decisions destroy any sense of tension or build-up because Boll is not interested in telling a story. He's interested in making action scenes. Like, this shootout lasts for almost 10 minutes, and it's exhausting. Stop! Alone in the Dark is a summary of my love life, but it's also Uwe Boll's next adaptation, which is about these monsters that appear in the dark because... Oh, wait, no, it's just more bullet porn. Of course. There is constant failure to escalate the situation. So, whilst there's this military gun-go-bang-bang stuff, it's jarringly interspersed with this tomb raiding where snakes happen, and then this guy gets halved, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and there's no build-up. Okay, so what do I mean by build-up? In Jurassic Park, the electricity is turned off, so the T-Rex escapes. Everyone is helpless and vulnerable. This leads to the characters abseiling down into the enclosure when the car gets pushed down, which causes the kid to get trapped in the tree, which causes the car to fall from the tree. All the time, they are scrambling for their lives. This is good build-up, and most of the time, the threat is a parked car.
Well, we're back in the car again.
This, however, is attempting suspense, but they're not helpless, they're not vulnerable, and there's no cause and effect, so it amounts to nothing. It's emotionless, just like 2006's Blood Rain. This is about a half-human, half-vampire who starts off getting tortured in a circus, and then this woman comes over.
Rain. Are you alright? I'm working on a plan to get us out of here. My uncle, he's a sailor.
Rain says nothing this entire time. Does she want to leave? Does she even know this woman? How does she feel, Uwe? Then these guys attack her and she goes frenzy mode and attacks everyone, including the woman. Oh no! Does she feel bad about this? How does she feel, Uwe?
She didn't mean to bite me. She's not a vampire. She is my friend.
How do we know this? She hasn't said or done anything so far that will suggest she's a friend.
I will not harm you. I only wish to kill vampires.
Since when? Tell that to what's-her-name. We never knew her name. All this is just in the first 17 minutes of the movie. It's like these are being made by a robot because there are zero emotions. Just confusing and senseless set pieces. In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale, is Uwe Boll's most expensive movie to date, with the novel concept of, what if we put Jason Statham into Lord of the Rings? Boll has referenced Lord of the Rings before, but this is an utterly shameless ripoff. Statham plays a farmer, who is a farmer. Wow. During an attack, his son gets murdered, and because Boll doesn't know how emotions work, everyone is incredibly insensitive about this.
Does it occur to you, farmer, that there may be events of greater importance than the loves and losses of our particular lives?
There's more important things than your dead son, like the very alive king!
Bastian, where's Zeph? Is he with our parents?
Yes. He's with them, but he didn't make it.
Jesus Christ, dude!
At the end of the day, you're all he really needs.
Their son is dead! Then they slay the bad guy.
You forget the vengeance of a mother!
And then they kiss, and the film ends, and wait, what? There's no closure to the dead son story. Even the mother seems to be over it very quickly. What could be more insensitive than this? Oh, for fuck's... okay. Postal is Uwe Boll's attempt at satirical comedy. And as somebody who has watched over 60 spoof movies for a video, I can tell you with some authority, it is very shit. Postal's standard for comedy is to be as tasteless as possible. Fat phobia, homophobia, xenophobia, kids get shot, a woman gets shit in her mouth, something about sperm in baby bottles.
So she used to put sperm into their bottles to build up their immune system. They all got AIDS.
There's a massive emphasis on the Taliban throughout this movie, who are trying to steal crotch-shaped children's toys because they want to create a pandemic that will outdo 9/11, and that sentence alone has made this movie incredibly outdated. This screams try hard. What it thinks is edgy humor is just boring. I genuinely fell asleep at one point during Postal because there's no thought put behind this. It's just shock humor, and that doesn't mean all shock humor is bad. But this is someone attempting a genre he just doesn't understand because he lacks the emotional maturity to handle it, and the results are painful.
I hate video games.
Following a return to bullet porn with Far Cry, Uwe Boll kind of stopped doing video game movies other than sequels to Blood Rain and In the Name of the King. I'm not overly familiar with the games that these films are based on, other than House of the Dead to an extent, so there may be the occasional nod here or there.
You got a last name? Curian.
There's no way out, Curian.
But whether these adaptations are faithful to the games or not, doesn't matter. They are lifeless. At best, they are mindlessly boring, and at worst, they are sociopathic. Uwe Boll has shown himself to be incredibly petty when it comes to criticism.
Fuck yourself.
He'd send harassing emails or challenge critics to boxing matches. Hell, he might even come for me after this. In which case, hi Uwe. I like this shot with the bullet flying through the air. That's actually pretty cool. But that's it. All he has done is made the reputation of video game movies substantially worse. And he probably did that on purpose. This Cinema Blend article highlights how, in German tax law, investments in movies can be written off with only the movie's returns being taxable. Basically, like the producers, you can make way more money making a bad movie than a good one. This is how Uwe Boll can sink millions of dollars into his adaptations even though every single one of them has been a commercial flop. And this is something Uwe Boll openly admits to.
The reason I'm able to do this kind of movies is I have a tax shelter fund in Germany. And if you invest in a movie in Germany, you get basically 50% back from the government.
This German tax loophole was finally closed in 2006, which probably explains the lack of notable adaptations from Boll in some time. In fact, he may have found more success owning restaurants than making movies. So maybe he has good taste after all. Or maybe not. The mid to late 2000s saw the 7th generation of consoles with the Xbox 360, the Wii, and the PlayStation 3. And this increase in technological power, well, maybe not the Wii, games could feature a lot more story. Jason! With more to draw upon, this time also saw a surge of video game movies. To begin with, they mimicked the styles of other movies in order to try and also mimic their success. Doom dropped demons in favor of mutated people, so basically zombies, possibly trying to replicate Resident Evil. No amount of beach volleyball will distract us from seeing Dead or Alive as being clearly a Charlie's Angels ripoff. And the most I can say about Elf Bowling is that it is a movie that exists.
Who pooped in the peanut barrel?
For some reason. So this derivative approach didn't exactly help the reputation of video game movies. Likewise were the false starts. Inspired by the success story of Lord of the Rings, and by inspired I mean their eyeballs turned into little dollar signs, movie studios were trying to turn IPs into multi-movie deals. This was also met with the post-9/11 era of angst, which just means that everything was very blue. Tomb Raider 2, Resident Evil 2, House of the Dead, Doom, Hitman, Max Payne, Hitman again. It's true what they say. I'm blue, dubba-dee, dubba-die. Dubba-dee, dubba-die. Dubba-dee. Dubba-die. Hitman and Max Payne in particular are such dry, bleak and miserable movies. It sucks the joy out of all the action scenes. These movies did well enough, but not well enough. After Hitman Agent 47, there were even plans to make a Marvel-styled shared universe with Just Cause, Deus Ex and Tomb Raider. This is a similar case with The Legend of Chun-Li, which was made to be an origin story as part of a series of Street Fighter films, like ones focusing on Ryu and Ken, which one would guess would lead up to the most ambitious crossover. So what you want about the 94 film, it at least had personality.
Is this a joke?
On the contrary, every bison dollar will be worth 5 British pounds. For that is the exchange rate the Bank of England will set once I've kidnapped their queen.
This was just so dull and uninspired.
You think this is over?
No, I'm just getting started.
It killed any sequels. And therein lies the problem with getting ahead of yourself and planning a whole franchise, because it can leave the first film lacking. Sequels are a natural part of movies, and even Mario and Street Fighter ended on cliffhangers to tease sequels that didn't happen. 2006's Silent Hill is actually a pretty fun horror movie for the most part, until it starts over-explaining everything and killing any mystery, but, you know, it was overall fine. It ends on a cliffhanger, which just feels more in keeping with horror, like, ooh, you thought it was over, but it's actually not. Either way, this did good enough for a sequel to be commissioned, but that wasn't great. I like the nurse scene, but that's it. Either way, this was a case of making a sequel because it deserved one. But 2010's Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was slated to be a big deal from the get-go. Disney wanted another flagship franchise like Pirates of the Caribbean, so they got Jerry Bruckheimer to produce this big-budget adaptation. This was in this era where Disney were desperately trying to create their own Star Wars, like the utter disaster that was John Carter, until Disney just bought Star Wars and everything else. But you can't get investors to back a film of this scale without the assurance that it will be a franchise. So to ensure this film will remain timeless, they whitewashed the whole cast.
Caucasian.
Huh. Prince of Persia is about a prince, in Persia, no way, who becomes a fugitive when his adopted father is murdered. It centers around a dagger that lets the wielder travel back in time 1 minute, like a rewind feature. Strangely, instead of playing a larger part, the time travel is hardly used.
This sand, is there more of it?
Of course not.
Like, Back to the Future doesn't have all that much time travel, but it at least played a bigger part in the story. By squandering this premise, the film is just okay. Like, the action and performances try their best, but overall it's unsatisfying. Clearly because this was meant to be a small part of a bigger thing. But despite it being one of the highest grossing video game movies, once again, we got no follow-up. So it's just another waste of time. And that's one of the biggest problems surrounding video game movies. It only has a history of about 30 years, but it's surrounded by low reviews, cancelled sequels, or commercial failures. Like Ratchet & Clank.
Don't move. I'm listening.
The studio, Rainmaker Entertainment, had already announced a Sly Cooper film, but had to quietly cancel it after losing millions following Ratchet & Clank, which seemed to try so hard to please everyone, it pleased no one. So no matter how many individual cases there are of decent films, because of the greater level of scrutiny, the general consensus starts to become that video game movies are all bad. It's enough to make you angry. You know, like a bird. In 2016, we got the Angry Birds movie. Now, expectations for this are already pretty low. The bad reputation of video game movies aside, this movie is based on an app. This is probably the most shallow source material you can get, but to much surprise, this is more fun than it should be. It's obviously no Pixar movie. In fact, the tonally off jokes for parents and the spontaneous pop songs, it shares more DNA with something like an Illumination movie. Maybe it's just because the bar has been set so low, but by simply not being shit, they've delivered a semi-decent film from the most unlikeliest of sources. And yes, this is the movie where the Angry Birds drink piss.
Oh, man.
The story is about a bird who is angry. No way. In a society of naive, spoiled, happy birds, as these foreigners come over here and ruin this once great country, and they're coming for our kids, so we better go over to their country and blow them up and... Oh no. So, that has extremely nasty undertones. So, seemingly in response, Angry Birds 2 have the birds and the pigs team up, which doesn't happen in the games. But you don't need to know that.
I'm in peace!
Ouch.
They unite under the threat of a greater enemy, and it ends with all parties getting along. At one point, this was the best reviewed video game movie, and yeah, it's pretty good. And this is Angry Birds.
Don't worry, guys. I'll get us out of this.
Video game movies were becoming a big deal again. 2016's Warcraft, based on a game made by Horrible Shits. Did you know that Uwe Boll actually applied to direct this movie, but Blizzard were worried that he would harm their reputation? Anyway, these movies tend to take two different forms. Either a Alice in Wonderland, where somebody gets teleported into another world, like the Mario movie and the Mario movie. The other kind is a kind of Lord of the Rings situation, where it's already set within the world, but that comes with the burden of world building. And for something like Warcraft, this has to cram in a lot of characters and lore at such a rushed pace, but it never stops to make you care. The Orc Chieftain is the only one given an emotional hook, but he has to vie for attention with a swath of other underdeveloped characters. Either way, this fantasy epic is the highest grossing video game movie to date. Yet somehow it is still considered a loss. But at least showed the market was receptive to video game movies as long as they looked the part. To make a movie based on Sonic the Hedgehog seems like a no-brainer, and talks even began as far back as 1993, but were dissuaded by the failures of Mario and Street Fighter. This was developed by Blur Studios, who had experience animating the cutscenes of Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06. Yeesh. So, what was up with that design? Well, by all accounts, this was to try and make Sonic gel with the real world, a reversal of that Alice in Wonderland formula. The design was overwhelmingly despised. It overtook any discussion of the film. It was a disaster after just one trailer. So it got pulled, and the director announced the design will be changed. When the new trailer got released, this got such a better reception. People even theorized that the bad design was done on purpose to capitalize on the outrage, but considering this design update cost $5 million and postponed the film's release date, that would be a pretty crazy move. Perhaps it's my own Sonic nerd bias talking, but I really enjoy this film.
And I know you're real!
For something that had everything going against it, it manages to be sweet and emotional, while still being a lot of family-friendly fun.
I was not expecting that. But I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
Even Jim Carrey is going old school, so this is just a 90s celebration. This puts Sonic front and center. They could have crowded him with his large ensemble of friends, or even his special abilities like the Supersonic, but they purposely kept the script stripped down and simple, which, unlike Warcraft, would allow us to follow what's going on, and in turn, actually care about it. Like Sonic, who is meant to be an alien, makes a lot of pop culture references, but that actually works because we see him absorb culture through TV, which he does alone.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Pop quiz, hot shot. Pop quiz, hot shot. Huh. Am I crazy? Supposed to break, right?
At one point, we see kids high-fiving after a baseball game, which he tries to replicate, but he can't because he's lonely. Then at the end, when he's accepted, he finally gets that high five. It's the subtle things like this that help make him endearing. Maybe I'm reading way too much into this. This isn't a masterpiece. But considering what it could have been, it's not a disaster piece.
Oh, come on.
I think these movies are managing to succeed now because they are finding their own voice. Ace Attorney is a wonderfully quirky comedy / murder mystery. Rampage is a dumb but fun rock and also a big monkey smashy movie. And Tomb Raider is a thrilling action movie that drops the flawless Lara for one that's barely surviving, which is way more exciting to watch. These films, along with Detective Pikachu and Mortal Kombat, are finding their footing because instead of trying to fit the adaptation into a pre-existing formula, they are being true to themselves and being the kind of movies they should be. This year saw the release of Werewolves Within, which is based on a VR game, which is based on a party game, Werewolves, or sometimes Mafia, where there's a secret killer among you and you have to figure it out through discussion and debate. Like a furry detective, the mystery is a woo. The VR game seems barely relevant to this adaptation, but this film is a delight.
It's you!
It's a little pale me.
It's a kind of murder mystery, but it's really about a quirky array of fun characters in an utterly charming dark comedy.
Where my gun goes, I goes.
Same. And I'm sleeping with my wife. Unless someone prefers that my gun stays in someone else's room. Cecily?
I'm good.
Which is exactly what this film should be. It's silly. If it tried to make an actual paranoid horror movie, it wouldn't be much like the game then. Because in the end, games are fun. So the movies representing them should be fun too. I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed. You can't hide your boring movie under all that bloom.
Ah, my eyes!
So what's next for video game movies? Idris Elba is voicing Knuckles in Sonic 2. The Mario movie has a crazy-looking cast. And they might actually finally make an Uncharted movie.
Don't ask. Don't f***ing ask.
There's still a lot of uncertainty, but that's just the nature of the movie industry. Video games have had a chaotic relationship with movies, and for good reason. For a long time, movie studios just didn't know what to do with them, and the results were either out of touch or soulless cash grabs. But now, movies are being made by those who grew up with games, and they've become part of our culture rather than some niche in-group with a lot of disposable income. Do you have to be an avid gamer to make a video game movie? Of course not. But adaptation of any existing piece of media will always lose something in translation. So, with careful consideration by the right people with creative vision and clear voice, you can pick out the right parts and turn it into a good movie first and foremost, while also being something that complements the source material rather than something to be ashamed of. And maybe that will finally save video game movies from their bad reputation. Such as the bad reputation of snakes. They're okay once you get to know them. Wait, this isn't my snake.
Meow?
Special thanks to this month's patrons, including Ashley Kinder, Mace Street Investment Group Limited, Rusty Robot, Vinnie Vex, Sloan Schoolcraft, Leif Andromeda, Mo El Kasemi, Kevin Green, Salix, Setsune Wave, Nathan Chawinati, Tom, Aaron Is Chummy, Brett Halford, Clam Wamsley, Decadane, Matthew Smith, Joel Jennings, Mark Cunner, and Joe Wood. And if you'd like to support me, then please consider doing so on Patreon.